Hello everybody, welcome back to Tom Reads Things. My name's Tom. I hope you are all very well. So for today's video, what I would like to do, if you will indulge me just for 1 minute, is to go back to the mid 1840s in England, in the north of England, in the county of Yorkshire, and nestled among the sprawling moors of the county of Yorkshire sits the village of Haworth. At the top of the hill in the village of Haworth is the parsonage and the church. Inside the parsonage lives the Reverend Patrick Bronte and his 4 surviving children. Among them is Reverend Patrick Bronte's son Branwell, who struggles out of the parsonage down to the Black Bull Inn, where he will spend the rest of his evening. Inside the parsonage, in his study, sits the Reverend Patrick Bronte himself. In the dining room of the parsonage sits 3 young women in front of a roaring fire, sitting around the dining room table, each with manuscripts and paper in front of them as their imaginations pour into the books in front of them. They stand up and walk around the table, each reading what they've written that evening and inspiring each other as they do. In their hands, they hold the manuscripts that they've been working on. Anne Bronte holds the tenant of Wildfell Hall, Emily Bronte holds Wuthering Heights, and the eldest, Charlotte, holds in front of her what is, in my opinion, probably the greatest novel ever written in the English language, Jane Eyre. So if you haven't guessed it, today's video is the first in my series of the My Relationship With videos, where I would like to discuss my relationship with the Bronte sisters. So let's talk about the Bronte sisters, shall we? So I first came to the Brontes, probably as many people do, with Wuthering Heights. I read Wuthering Heights for school, but then I didn't really engage with the Brontes until I started reading again as an adult for pleasure. But it's not with Wuthering Heights where I'd like to start today. I'd like to start by talking about Anne Bronte. Now, I have only read one of Anne Bronte's books, Agnes Grey. Most people rave about The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and I'm still yet to read that, but I'm really intrigued to read it. I've heard amazing things about how it tackles really interesting themes around alcohol addiction, and also it's supposed to be one of the first pieces of real feminist literature. So yeah, really excited to read that. But the book that I have read of Anne Bronte's is Agnes Grey. So this follows the story of a governess, and I believe that Anne really drew on her personal experiences working as a governess when writing this book. In my opinion, this book is a kind of gentle introduction to the Brontes, and I actually think it's a really great place to start with the Brontes. It's fairly short, and it doesn't have the wild passion of Wuthering Heights or the kind of incredibly headstrong, powerful characters in Charlotte's writing, but it is still a fantastic book, and I really enjoyed it. I am really excited to get to The Tenant of Wildfell Hall because I understand that a lot of the themes that Anne discusses in that book were inspired by her having to live in the parsonage with her brother Branwell, who was suffering from alcohol addiction himself, and she experienced firsthand how that tore the family apart, how her and her sisters were forced to try and protect their father as much as possible, as Branwell tried to get as much money out of him as he could to feed his alcohol addiction. So I'm really interested to read The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. Do let me know down in the comments section below if you've read it. Perhaps you're reading it this Victober, or perhaps you've read Agnes Grey this Victober. Do let me know. But yeah, I think Agnes Grey is a great introduction to the Brontes. What I would say is don't expect too much out of it. Don't expect the wild passion that you are led to believe all Bronte novels have. In this book, it is a much gentler story, but a fantastic story all the same. Now, the next book that I want to talk about is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. So this is the only completed novel that Emily published. We believe potentially that, I say we, like I'm some kind of aficionado, but it is believed that potentially she was working on another novel when she died, but that Charlotte destroyed the kind of manuscripts for it when Emily passed away. That's just kind of hearsay, but it is a potential theory. Anyway, back to Wuthering Heights. So Wuthering Heights is often seen as it's often perceived by people who haven't read it as a fantastic romantic love story, but it is anything but. It's full of powerful, aggressive characters. Now, I have to be honest, I have not read Wuthering Heights all the way through. I have DNF'd it 3 times. Once at school, I couldn't bear to read any more of it. Once when I was in my late 20s, and once last year when I tried to read it again. I always get to the same point where I can't really remember what it is, but it's someone's knocking on someone's window and it's a dream, or something's happening like that, and people don't know whether it's a dream or not. And yeah, I couldn't really get on with it. Now, I know this is a lot of people's favourite novels of all time, and I will, to be honest, I am willing to keep giving this a go until I get through it and until I bloody well enjoy it, because I really, really, really want to persevere with this. So I think I'm not going to pick it up this Victober, but I am going to pick it up potentially early next year, and see how I get on with it, and not try and rush myself through it, and not try and force myself to kind of feel like I should be getting more out of it than I am. And what I'm also probably going to do is just pick up where I left off last time, rather than having reread the same kind of 100 pages or whatever it is for the 4th time. So yes, I do know that this is many people's favourite novels of all time. So let me know if you're reading this for Victober, and let me know what you're thinking. I know Charles Heathcote just uploaded a video where he was talking about Wuthering Heights and how he had reread it and still really couldn't get on with it. So I'm glad to see that I'm not the only one, Charles. But yeah, do let me know what you think of this. I think what comes out in this is Emily's, what I do get from this is Emily's extremely powerful and vivid imagination, and what she gets from her surroundings in Haworth and the moors, the emotions that she derives from the landscape and her settings are what really feeds this book, I think, and feeds those characters. So that's what I really got out of it, and that's what I really enjoyed of it. So yeah, do let me know if you're reading this for Victober this year. Now, the next book that I would like to talk about is The Complete Poems of Emily Bronte. So Emily was a renowned poet. Her sister Charlotte read her poetry in secret, and it was that incident that made Charlotte believe that they could become published poets if they put their heads together. It was the strength of Emily's poetry that made Charlotte believe that they could make a success of themselves. And I absolutely, fully agree with Charlotte's sentiments there. For me, Emily Bronte's poetry is absolutely beautiful. And again, you really get the sense that she is deriving all of her inspiration and her passion for where she lives and the settings around her. The moors of Yorkshire, for anyone who has been there, will know that it's a very inspirational place, full of atmosphere and full of wonder, and a real place to kind of set off your imagination. So a lot of her poems are based on feelings around the landscape from where she lived, and I find that absolutely amazing and enthralling, and her poetry is just absolutely beautiful. So this is one of the books that I'm reading for Victober, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. I am 71 pages through. I don't know how many poems that is, but they're all absolutely beautiful, and I can really see, reading these, I can just absolutely vividly imagine in my mind Charlotte sitting in Emily Bronte's room, having gone through her things to find her poetry, and just sitting there reading them, being completely awestruck by them. So yes, do let me know if you have read any of Emily Bronte's poetry and what you think of it. And actually, if you're reading any poetry for Victober, do let me know what poetry it is that you're reading and how you're getting on with it. Just before we go on, I just wanted to show you this absolutely lovely candle that has come to me all the way from the US of A. The absolutely lovely Kate Howe sent me this, and it's from the Oldfield Anthology, the oldfieldsociety.com, and it's a Charles Dickens themed candle, and it's patchouli scented, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Mark and I have been burning this in the evening, and actually it lasts a really long time. So it's, yeah, really, really nice. So I just wanted to flag that up and say thank you very much, Kate, for sending this to me. It's absolutely lovely. And how fitting for Victober, a Charles Dickens candle. The next book that I would the next book that I would like to talk about is Villette by Charlotte Bronte. So Villette follows the story of Lucy Snow, who has nothing left for her in England, so decides to set sail for Europe and the small town of Villette, where she becomes a teacher in a school. Charlotte published this after the death of both of her sisters, Anne and Emily, and it talks a lot in this book about mental health issues. And I'm not really aware of any other Victorian literature that really kind of talks about mental health issues in the same way that Villette does. It doesn't do it necessarily in a kind of obscure way, but much more in a direct way than what I would have assumed for Victorian literature. And actually, it was quite a shock to me. I was thinking, goodness, Charlotte's talking about mental health issues in this book that you wouldn't necessarily have seen discussed during that time. So I thought it was really, really, really interesting. I really enjoyed this book. For me, the character of Lucy is incredibly well developed, and I love the fact that you follow her throughout her highs and her lows and the potential love story that she goes through in this book. I feel like the setting of the school and Villette as a place is incredibly well developed, and it feels completely real when you're reading it. For me, this wasn't a chore to read at all, and I found it incredibly accessible, and I found the story absolutely beautiful and wonderfully written. Obviously, Charlotte Bronte wrote it. So yes, absolutely bloody love this book. The next book that I would like to talk to you about it's in my top 4 favourite books of all time, and depending on what day you catch me on, I will probably tell you it is my favourite book of all time and could potentially be the greatest novel ever written in the English language, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So Jane Eyre, for me, you can take a lot of things from Jane Eyre. You can see it as a story about an incredible, powerful, headstrong woman who knows what she wants and is not afraid to stand up to figures of authority when she knows that they are wrong, and are standing in the way of what she believes is right and what she believes she deserves. You can also read it as a fantastic love story between Jane and the dark and brooding Mr. Rochester. Either way, really what I get from it and the way I choose to look at it is it's just a bloody brilliant story. The character of Jane is so well developed and so ingrained in this story, and she is carved out in your mind so perfectly by Charlotte's writing right from the outset, where Jane is living with her family who are not very nice to her, and you really instantly build that connection with Jane as a character, and that connection never leaves you throughout the whole of this novel as you follow her throughout her life and the ups and downs that she goes through and the people that she meets. There are some incredibly moving and touching scenes in this. A girl that Jane becomes friends with at her boarding school is said to be inspired by Charlotte's older sister Mariah. And I just think it's just such a fantastic book. It's hard to kind of talk about it without giving too much away because there are many kind of plot twists in this. And I just think I love to imagine Charlotte sitting there around that table writing Jane Eyre, or finishing off Jane Eyre, because I know she didn't start it at the parsonage, but finishing off Jane Eyre, and I just love to think of what it must have been like around that dining room table with those fantastic minds of the three sisters writing their works. Emily writing Wuthering Heights and her poetry, Anne writing Agnes Grey and the Tenant of Wildfell Hall, while Charlotte's working on her fantastic works. And it just must have been a hive of creativity in that one single room, with that roaring fireplace going and the winds howling across the moors. So yes, do let me know if you have read Jane Eyre. I'm sure many of you will have read Jane Eyre, and if you haven't, you're probably reading it for Victober. Am I right? But yes, it's just such a fantastic book, and it's actually one of the only books that I will probably consider rereading. So yes, do give this a go if you haven't already. It is captivating, spellbinding, amazing, enthralling, and just utterly, utterly brilliant. So the last thing that I want to talk about on my relationship with the Brontes video is something that I've spoken about quite a lot on this channel before, but I just want to talk about it again because it's so good. It's a film called To Walk Invisible, and you can watch it on Amazon Prime. And it is the dramatisation of the three Bronte sisters' lives and how they dealt with Branwell's alcoholism, and how they started writing and decided to try to get their works published. And it goes through all of them publishing Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights and Agnes Grey and the Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and it goes through all of that story whilst they're trying to grapple with what's going on at home and protecting their father from a very destructive Branwell. It is amazing. I think it's written and directed by Sally Wainwright, and she does not polish it at all. It is true Victorian northern grit. It's incredibly rich in its production, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. So yes, that is called To Walk Invisible on Amazon Prime. Do give that a go if you're interested. So yes, that's it from me today. I hope you're all having a wonderful Victober, and I will be back again very shortly with a booktube video talking about my non-fiction collection. Okay, see you soon. Thanks, bye.